Keep in mind, it was trends just like this that informed his decision to remove the ban on outside dining. No reason to think that he wouldn't do or couldn't do something similar with the tier system. He could just arbitrarily say, we're moving them from yellow to orange.
I guess I've done it again, because that's pretty much exactly what the governor did do. Even better, he's moved theme parks from yellow to red. So much for slow, stubborn, and stringent, I guess. I mean, those were his words, not a few months ago. But let's not talk about that too much. Let's not focus on that. Let's talk about what these new guidelines are and what they mean for Disneyland. Today, we're going to talk about everything that we know so far about the guidelines, as well as make some, informed guesses about what it might mean for Disneyland specifically and how Disney might respond to this announcement. We're going to talk about all that and more next on Fresh Baked. Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Fresh Baked. Before we get into the heart of this video, I want to ask you guys real quick to do us a favor and to like this video and try to stay through to the end. It's a great way to help support our channel, and I promise on our end to make it as worth your while to watch this entire video, because that is what we're best at. You can trust Fresh Baked to bring you good show. All right, so now I know that it's been less than a day since this news broke, but already there are lots of questions that we could be answering, lots of information to be dissected. Now, in some cases, we're going to give you some actual facts that we can present to you, and in other cases, it's going to be some, well-informed assumptions. Basics first. Theme parks, I can't believe I'm going to say this. Theme parks can open on April 1st at 15% capacity in the red tier. So that's a huge leap from where we were just yesterday. Now, it gets better. Orange tier can open at 25% capacity, and yellow tier can open at 35%. But really, just getting things open is the key thing here, and that can be done in the red tier. Now, the fact that they feel like they can do this in the red tier suggests to me that the state has a lot of confidence in the efficacy of the various vaccines that are out there. The Pfizer, the Moderna, the Johnson & Johnson. There's a lot of providers out there, and they all appear to be doing their job. So they're, as I mentioned in our video from the other day, they're putting a lot of their "we're going for it" attitude in the vaccine basket. So that's pretty exciting stuff. Now, what does this mean for capacity in terms of Disneyland specifically? At 15%, that means 12,000 guests based on an 80,000 guest capacity. 20,000 guests if they're in the orange tier at 25% capacity, and 28,000 guests if they happen to be in the yellow tier at 35% capacity. By the way, I should remind everybody that Disney has been fiddling with the idea of creating windows of eligibility, windows of time that you can go to the park. In other words, there's possibly an all-day ticket, or possibly a ticket that doesn't start until goes from noon to closing, or a ticket they might sell that goes from 5 p.m. to closing. If done, this could effectively allow Disney to bring in more guests per day, not just the 12 or 20 or 28,000 guests, but potentially double that. Double that, the number of unique guests that can come to the park. Maybe not all day, but it's still more opportunity for guests to come to the park. But that's another conversation for another video. Actually, it's a conversation and another video that we've done already, and I would invite you to watch that video. When we're done with this one, check out our video that we did on the rumors about Disney doing this, rumors about different kinds of tickets that Disney might sell. Click the eye in the sky right there at the end of this video, and enjoy that one as well. It would be a great favor to Fresh Baked. Thank you very much. Okay, next, if we're opening in the red tier, the guidelines that I saw mentioned specifically no indoor dining. No indoor dining in the red tier, which is interesting actually, because everywhere else in the state of California, you can dine with limited capacity, but you can dine indoors in the red tier. Everywhere else but at a theme park. I don't get it, but there you go. Okay, the provided grid did not at any point specifically mention rides or attractions. Now, some have suggested that this bullet point saying indoor capacity max 15% with time restrictions is in reference to indoor rides. That's possible, but I'm personally a little skeptical of that, if only because the reference to time limitations seems, I don't know, inappropriate for this discussion. I don't mean in a bad way. I just mean, why are they talking about time restrictions when they're talking about attractions? In other words, it's kind of an odd thing to bring up in this discussion. It's actually kind of a cryptic thing to bring up as part of this discussion. I will say, though, that the article from the OC Register about this announcement, the OC Register is a local newspaper here in Orange County and has been pretty well informed throughout the pandemic. The OC Register said that the rides would be open at 15% in the red tier and 25% in the orange and yellow tiers. Now, I'm not sure where they get that, where they have been able to confirm that, unless they had a separate conversation, because it's not mentioned in the grid that we saw, that we've been looking at. In fact, there's no reference to attractions at all on the grid. Now, the absence of any mention of rides could be a good sign. It means that they're good to go, obviously with restrictions in terms of capacity, but that all attractions would be open. They would say something specifically if that weren't the case. And it's possible that this is the case because masks are going to be worn at all times in every attraction. You can't take masks off, though you can take masks off when you dine in a restaurant. However, one could also observe that rides have been a particular, they've been focusing on rides a lot as the true danger of going to a theme park, in so much as you can go to Buena Vista Street today and you can dine at Buena Vista Street. You can have a corn dog, you can have a pretzel, but you can't ride a ride. So they're saying riding rides is more dangerous than eating food. But when the time comes to establish, formal guidelines, not a single word is said about rides in the actual guidelines, at least the guidelines that we have seen so far. Just an observation. I'm a big dummy. Okay, so the last bulleted point is an item that is consistent through all three tiers, and that is that the parks can reopen to California residents only. My apologies to our out-of-state fans and guests who love Disneyland. Not yet. Now, I know this is bad news, but I do think that this is a temporary situation and is only in place because there's presently a travel advisory in the state of California. And I have heard it been suggested that could be lifted, that travel advisory could be lifted as early as May for the same reasons. They're feeling confident, they're feeling secure, the travel restrictions won't be in place. It makes perfect sense. If they're going to open up Disneyland, they should also open up the border. I mean, that makes sense. So even though they're saying that right now, that's because the travel advisory is still in effect until, who knows, I'm not sure what the actual date is, if there is a close date, but I've heard possibly as early as May. Okay, and I also missed this last item, as I thought it was part of the travel advisory thing, but the last item in the red tier said that tickets had to be purchased online. Not that that isn't a given already. I kind of think we already knew this, but it's weird that they mentioned it in the red tier, that the tickets had to be purchased online, but there was no mention of it in the orange or yellow tier. I don't expect them to lift that requirement for the orange or yellow. That's kind of an odd thing. It almost makes me feel like its inclusion was an afterthought. It was an accident, that they didn't mean to put it in there because it's formatted kind of differently. It didn't get its own bullet point. I don't know why I'm focusing on this. There you go. It's on there on the grid, and it bears just observing at least. But I don't think it makes any difference either way. Disney is going to be requiring tickets be purchased online and reservations made because it's the only way to do this. It's the only way to limit capacity. If you sell tickets at the gate, you have no control of capacity. So it goes without saying, reservations and online tickets required. And that's really all the confirmed information that we have so far. It's very light in detail, those guidelines that we received. The rest is up for speculation and guessing. So with that is one of my favorite things to do, is I like to speculate and I like to guess, and I've been doing that a lot lately, and I'm getting a few things right. So let's talk about those things. Let's talk about what my expectations are based on what I know so far and make some assumptions, some informed assumptions. And we'll start off with, don't expect any live entertainment. No parades, no fireworks, no Fantasmic, no World of Color. The Disneyland Band, Dapper Dans, not likely. If they do it, they will be sequestered, socially distanced off, somewhere else where you can just observe from a distance. Same thing for character meet and greets. No character meet and greets. Certainly not the kind where you could get up and get your picture taken, but possibly the kind that you might have seen already at Walt Disney World, where they're up on a balcony somewhere or out in a separated area. You might see that, and we might see that actually at Touch of Disney, which we'll talk about later in a second. Don't expect any buttons. Don't expect a cast member to take a picture of you with your phone. Don't expect any kind of situation where you and a cast member might touch the same thing, except for your food. Expect ticket prices to be the same. Do not expect ticket prices to go down, even if we're getting less Disneyland than we normally would get. Also, do not expect annual passes to be available anytime soon. I don't think we're going to see annual passes. I could foresee this being put off until 2022. We may not see an annual pass for the rest of this year, which isn't that far, really. We're already, in March? The park will open in, well, I'm going to get into that when I think the park is going to open, but it only leaves half a year, basically, for the parks to be open. So a la carte tickets only for the short term. They had mentioned the guidelines that parks could open on April 1st. I do not expect Disneyland to be open on April 1st. I don't think that any sane person would expect the parks to be open on April 1st, mostly because I just don't think that they could be ready in that time. My best guess is that they're going to let Touch of Disney play out all of its dates all the way through to April 19th and then open Disneyland shortly after that. Assuming, of course, we're in the red, but I don't think that that's a possibility that we wouldn't be. We're so very close right now. In fact, like I mentioned in another video, we're in the orange and 2 metrics and right on the cusp of red. It won't take but a nudge to get us in there. So I'm not worried about that. Now, it'll be a bit before we get a confirmed date from Disney. They've got a lot of things to work out, but I do think we'll get an announcement of a date probably within the next week or two. I think next week is probably too soon, so maybe 7 to 10 days or something like that. Certainly not more than 2 weeks, I don't think, because people, there's going to be demand. People are going to want to make plans. They may not be coming from out of state, but they may be coming from a long ways away. California is a big place. So people are going to want to make plans, and Disney is going to want to dissuade. They're going to want to dissuade guests from making plans for April 1st. They need to let them know a solid couple of weeks, I think, or maybe at least a week before April 1st to let people know not to expect to be here for that, not to make hotel reservations for April 1st or anytime near that. They need to let people know when they can start planning vacations at Disneyland. So it won't be long before we get a date. I'm thinking in about a week. Now, as far as an opening date goes, Disney has mentioned in the past that it would take up to 6 weeks to get the park ready. Now, that was before the park was we're talking about last, May or June when they suggested that, those 6 months or 6 weeks. I mean, that's when the park wasn't ready to open. Since then, they've been getting ready to open for, 9 months now. So they've got some of that time they've already accounted for. The park is ready in terms of infrastructure, in terms of being prepared with, social distance markers, that kind of thing. But what they haven't done, what they can't do until they know a date or until they get close to opening is the rehiring of cast members and making, getting supplies and merchandise and food and getting all that taken care of. I'm thinking 4 weeks to call back CMs and to train them on all the new protocols, all the new social distancing stuff, everything that's, pandemic ready, to train all those new folks, because they've only trained a handful of guests or cast members so far. There's thousands more that have still been laid off or on furlough that need to be completely trained. So give maybe 4 weeks for that. At the same time, they could be getting the park ready for guests. And I'm talking about supplies that need to be brought in, food fresh food that needs to be brought in, because right now all they've got there is frozen stuff. And then merchandise, getting the stores, getting the gift shops guest ready. So while they're doing 4 weeks for training, 4 weeks also at the same time getting the park ready for guests with fresh food and fresh merchandise for us to buy. Okay, I mentioned Touch of Disney a little bit ago, and I do expect them to keep all dates. I think Touch of Disney is going to run its full complement of dates all the way to April 19th. Now, one question that I do find very fascinating, and one that is going to be probably difficult to answer, and that is whether or not Disney would allow guests to ride attractions at California Adventure after April 1st? I guess my first and best guess would be no, that they're not going to do that. If only because they have staffed, budgeted, and prepped California Adventure for an event that has no rides. That's what they've gotten ready for. They've made all these moves for a no ride event. It would not be the easiest thing in the world to suddenly, bring in a whole bunch of new cast members, get the rides prepped and ready for guests, get everything else ready for guests, while not making any more additional income because they've already sold the ticket for $75. So now they would have to bring in a whole bunch of new cast members and spend a whole bunch of money for a thing that isn't going to add anything to their bottom line. And actually, now that I'm saying these words out loud, it's making me think for sure that the answer is no, that we will not be able to ride any rides at California Adventure during Touch of Disney. Although it does bring up the question, when are they going to get DCA ready if they're spending all this time, hosting a Touch of Disney event? Like we just said, while they're doing Touch of Disney, they could be getting Disneyland ready. Well, when are they going to make DCA ready for guests? I mean, I guess they're going to have Tuesday and Wednesday. They could do that on Tuesdays and Wednesdays when they're not having an event. But otherwise, that's a good question, man. That's a tough thing. How do they do that? I mean, they've got everything else pretty much ready because they've been getting it ready for Touch of Disney. It's just the rides. They just have to get the rides ready. And I suppose that's not the hardest thing in the world to do. But it's an interesting thought experiment. I would like to know more. Okay, getting back to tickets when it comes to buying regular park tickets, there was no mention. Obviously, Disney hasn't spoken about this at all. Disney has not spoken about tickets, about when or where you might be able to get those tickets. They haven't said anything other than kind of a bland comment from Ken Patrick on the Disney Parks news Twitter feed. But I mean, no, they haven't said anything. I wouldn't have expected them to say anything. I actually think this was kind of a surprise, but another conversation. But again, I don't think we don't even have a date for opening, so we wouldn't know how to buy tickets. We won't know that until we have a date. And again, I feel like knowing the date, maybe a week from now, and then shortly after that, they'll let us know how to buy them. It's kind of the same thing they did with Touch of Disney, though I don't think we're gonna be waking up on whatever date that is, not knowing how to buy a Disneyland ticket. I think they're gonna have to give us a little more heads up, I think, in this case. Now, there has been some debate I've seen in comments and on Twitter about whether or not Disney would find it justifiable, whether or not they would even bother opening if they could only open at 15%. And the answer to that question is yes. Yes, they will open at 15%. That's still 12,000 guests. And now the trouble that some people, if they know they're getting 12,000 guests, then they can plan. They can staff, order supplies, order merch, order food based on 12,000 guests. The problem with profitability and whether or not it's worth it is when you plan for 40,000 guests or 50,000 guests and get 12. That's when you start running into issues of profit. But if they know in advance that they're going to get 12,000 guests, then sure, yeah, it's no problem. It's no problem at all to plan for staff, merchandise, and food for 12,000. As a matter of fact, that's the whole reason why Disney is secretly grateful for this downtime at Disneyland, because it's allowed them to rethink how they sell tickets, which again was a topic for another video. Not just the annual passes, rethinking how they do the annual pass, but rethinking how they sell individual tickets. I encourage you to watch the videos that we did on that topic a few weeks ago. Check the eye. I'm not sure where the eye is. It's in one of those corners. Just look for the little eye. And I'll give you a little banner here to tell you which ones to look out for. But they want a situation where they can tell for sure how many guests are going to be there. They're quite happy knowing, I think, for the short term, knowing that there's going to be 12,000, then 20, then 28,000 guests in the park. They want more, obviously. And when that time comes, they're going to be ready with a plan to sell you tickets so that they do it on a reservation basis. And that's going to be here for a while. I'm going to try to remember this because it triggered a memory that I have about Walt Disney World. I'm not positive if I have this right, but Disney has already confirmed that Reservations will be required at Walt Disney World through 2022. This is the thing. Reservations are going to be a thing for the near future. And I'm not just talking months, I'm talking years. And actually, I think that covers it. That covers everything that we know so far. I fully expect, though, more information to be released on the regular for the next couple of weeks until we get to the opening date. So be sure to stay tuned to Fresh Baked because we're going to have that for you. We're going to keep our eyes open and our ears to the ground so we know exactly when things are happening. Look to Fresh Baked to keep you up to date. We've got you, always have, always will. The best of Disney, bake fresh daily. So love you guys. Stay safe out there. Be kind to one another. And we'll see you next time. Fresh Baked.